Welcome back to LeEdFollow, where today I am going to be fitting a cover to the bottom of the engine that protects the flywheel. More on that later. I'm also going to be replacing the crank pulley at the front of the engine. More on that later. And while I've got the cover off, I'm going to be inspecting the timing gear. So let's go. So what I wanted to show you was this. You can see the flywheel. Now, clearly something is missing here, and I didn't realise it until after the engine went in. The flywheel is very visible. Now, of course, that would probably be okay, but I'm always worried that stones may get up into there. So I contacted Subaru, and they had a look through the parts catalogue for me, and there are some plates to go across here to protect the flywheel. I think there are about 3 or 4 different versions, depending on which setup of engine and gearbox and car it came from, but unfortunately not all of them are still available. So at this point I want to let you know that this part is what I was trying to get hold of. I'm pretty sure this is the correct one that I need for this job. Unfortunately, they don't have any stock at Subaru of this part anywhere on the planet. That's what they told me. So instead, the only thing I could get hold of was this part. Pretty sure it's totally the wrong one for this engine. However, it's what I ended up with, and what you'll see in this video now is how I've modified this to fit. However, saying that, since I've actually recorded this video, one of the actual parts that I wanted turned up secondhand on eBay, and I've nabbed it. So in a later video, when that turns up, I'll fit it and see if that's a better solution than what I've come up with here. But anyway, watch for yourselves. So they did sell me what was available still. And I've got this metal plate thing. If I show you the part number on the bag, it's this. This was the only one we could still get. It needs a couple of bolts to hold it in place. There's the part number for the bolts in there. However, what I've noticed is there is no way this is ever going to fit, because number one, I have to raise the engine to get it in there. But also, if you look at where the bolt holes go, so there is one bolt hole there, and there is the other bolt hole there, and as you can see, they are right up against the gearbox, whereas on here the bolt holes are quite a bit further in. So I don't know whether that's because I'm using the 86 gearbox or whether this is just the wrong plate, but what I'm thinking I'm going to have to do is cut along just above these holes to there, and the same on the other side, and then it may well fit. There's still going to be a gap because there's a gap here. I guess that's so that crap can fall out. But the most important thing is it's curved enough to kind of deflect stones from pinging up into there. So that's the most important thing. So I'm going to modify this and hopefully it will fit. Okay, so many back and forth attempts to try to fit this. I even got it a little bit wrong there, as you can see. Started cutting in totally the wrong place, and my wits came back to me just before I actually lopped that corner off. But this is what I've ended up with. Fingers crossed this will fit now. Okay, finally it fits. Let me show you. So it's in there. Yes, I had to cut lots of it away. Yes, the flywheel's still showing. But clearly that's by design, because they cut a groove in the piece, but you can see one bolt there and one bolt there. You have to put them in with a Phillips head screwdriver. There's no room at all to get a spanner or a socket on in there, but you can get it in without having to remove the engine or lift the engine, which is cool. I mean, I did have to cut it a lot to get it to fit, but once it did fit, I had no problems getting it in from below. So brilliant. I'm going to call that job done. I'm going to move on. So now it's time to pop the bonnet, because I'm going to do this front cover. First things first, I need to undo this bolt, get this old pulley off, and then start to make my way around the outside of all of these bolts that are holding it on. Then I should be able to find a little space like there, get a screwdriver and gently pull the cover off. Let's get to it. So here is the new pulley, and that's the part number. The reason I'm showing you that first and not at the end of the job is because you need a special tool to remove it. Now, getting the actual Subaru tool for removing that pulley, very difficult, but ICP who do loads of Subaru stuff, they have this crank pulley removal tool. Now this is from an Impreza, so this is going to be from an EJ20. Now the problem with this is that it is not the right shape or size for the EZ30. So as you can see, what you would do is you put this on like this, and that would bolt into place on the pulley. Then you would put a socket on an extension bar through the middle there to undo it. Now as you can see, these little bits that jut out here, these little four I guess pegs, they do not line up with the four holes at the front of the pulley. However, they will fit within these recesses. So all I need to do is cut this raised section out between the pegs so that it sits flush against the pulley face, and those pegs should find a home within those grooves. So this may take a while. I'll come back to you. So for those of you who are curious as to how I'm going to go about modifying it, this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm taking an angle grinder and I'm literally going around a few times to take little slits out of it. And then of course, once you got to that stage, you can use a Dremel from the inside just to remove all these little thin bits that are poking up. It's a bit time consuming. I'm sure there's a much quicker and easier way. I have got a pillar drill. One of the things I did think is that I could actually just drill out these studs and replace them with longer studs. However, I'm then worried that they might bend being longer. It's probably a good idea just to leave them at the height they are. So this is the way I'm doing it. Not necessarily the right way, but it's the way that I'm going to get this job done. So I'm going to carry on. Seems to be working, and it's not actually taking as long as what I thought it would. So, shouldn't take too much longer. So, done. That didn't actually take as long as I thought it would. Yes, it's not pretty, but it is flush, and I had to remove about 2 mil off of the edge of every stud. It looks a mess, but it did the job. I've already cracked the bolt off. It just goes in like so. See, fits perfectly. Then I get my brake bar with a, what's that? That's a 22. And then that goes on. Then that goes on through there, and you use those to undo the bolt. Of course, I've already done it, so it's already loose, but you can see, finger tight. So I can get that pulley off now. So I've got a bit of a predicament. So we can tell that this seal has been leaking. You can see all the oil that's been around here. It's not so much here. It's very much around here. But there's no signs of any leaks from the rest of the cover. It looks all very clean down here. And yes, there's a little bit, if I just turn the camera around, there's a little bit of oil here. But I don't think it's leaking from there. I think it's just running down from where the pulley seal was leaking up top. So you've got to ask yourself a question. Is it worth trying to take this cover off to check the timing if there's no reason to suspect that timing's off? I mean, there isn't. I was just going to try to check the guides and the tensioners just to put my mind at rest, get a bit of peace of mind. But I don't think it's worth it. I'll tell you why. Because every YouTube video that I've watched or forum article that I've read about removing this cover says that these bolts, of which there are 59 I believe, they tend to round off. They're like really common for snapping and rounding off. And actually down here at the bottom, there is one here that has had a very nasty knock. So there's no way I'm going to be able to get a Allen key in there to remove it. So I'm very much opening a can of worms for myself if I try to remove this front cover. So I'm thinking, let's just pass this. Let's just clean this up, put the new seal in, put the new pulley on, and then move on. Because this was a £400 engine after all. A kit with a new chain and tensioners and guides and all that kind of stuff is almost £400 in itself. So I'm thinking I'm going to roll the dice here, and I'm going to I'm going to hope that this engine is good. Everything else on this engine that I've checked so far suggests it is good. I've got no reason to suspect the timing is out or anything is wrong with the tensioners or the guides. So let's just go for it. Let's just move on, and we can move on to something much cooler like the headers. So here's the new seal. Very similar to the crank seal at the back, but just a smaller version. And as you can see, I've already started working it out. I've got these little picks, and all I'm doing is I'm just picking from the side and levering it out. Of course, I'm levering it against the face, which is not where the oil seal seals to, so this isn't going to do any damage. It's not going to cause oil leaks. But yeah, just a little bit at a time, slowly and surely, until it comes out. Okay, I took the old seal out and I cleaned out the hole as best I could with a bit of tissue, and I've now just finger pressed the new seal in place. Now I'm going to use the same technique that they recommend on the rear seal. I'm going to take this socket and I'm just going to rotate around the edge, applying pressure until the head of the socket comes flush with the casing, because that's only as far as the seal needs to go in. Whatever you do, don't push the seal too far. There is no lip at the back to stop it going all the way into the engine. If you push it all the way through, you've then got to take the front cover off, and as we discussed earlier, I want to avoid that. Okay, new seal is in, and you can see it's flush with the casing. So I just used that extension, and I was tapping it with the side of the hammer because there's not a lot of room in there. But that's gone in a treat now. You can tell when the seal's all the way in because you have a kind of a dull thudding sound as you're striking the edge of the seal. But then when the seal recesses flush with the actual casing, it turns to almost like a sound of cracking nuts because you're hitting the cover instead. But anyway, that's great. So I'm going to get the new pulley and the new bolt now, and we'll put those on. Okay, so once again, this is the part number for the new pulley. And then in my hand, I have the new bolt. Always best to use a new one. And I believe, is that right? I got it behind the sticker. So that's 12369888022. Now it is recommended that you put a little bit of engine oil, not just on the face of the washer here, but underneath the washer between the head and the washer. That way, when you go to torque it up, there's no drag on the surface that could skew the torque figures. Okay, so new bolt in and new pulley on, and I'm going to just start by finger tightening that all the way in till it won't go in any further. Okay, doesn't want to go any further. Right, I'm going to get the special tool again, and I'm going to get my breaker bar and the 22mm socket. Right, so tool is on. Let's get the breaker bar and just build up the torque. Of course, I'm going to have to put a torque wrench on this to get the exact torque setting, but I remember getting it off was needed a lot of work to start off with, so I'm going to get it to there. Right, oh yeah, that'll do. Get the torque wrench. I couldn't find the exact torque settings for this nut for an EZ30. I did find similar torque settings for a slightly different part number, which I think maybe came from a 2.5 Legacy or something like that, and that recommendation was torque it up to 44 Newton meters and then give it an extra turn based on these settings. So I think basically, I might be wrong, but I think you basically align the breaker bar with 30 and you turn it down to 0. But even that felt very under torqued on this compared to how much effort it was to remove the bolt in the first place. So in all honesty, I just did it up as hard as I could using a breaker bar. That's as much pressure as I can possibly put on it, and hopefully that'll do. But if anybody has got the correct torque settings for an EZ30D front crank pulley bolt, please drop it in the comments. I can always tighten this up at a later date after the car's on the road. Okay, so the next job I want to do is fit the AC pump and the alternator at the top of the engine now that we're not taking that cover off. I actually wanted to use the GT86 alternator because that's rated for a higher charging voltage, not voltage, amps, you know what I mean. This is a Legacy one. The reason I went for this is the actual mounting holes didn't align with the GT86 one. It was going to be a lot of bodging, so I thought I'll just get a genuine EZ30 AC pump and a genuine EZ30 alternator, and then things should be a lot simpler. So let's go over to the car. This comes with a bracket, so hopefully that should just sit like this and align to the bolt holes, and then the alternator mounts onto that side. So yeah, that looks about right. I just need to find some suitable bolts. Right, so I don't actually have the bolts for the bracket. The part number, if you're interested, is 8110510. You're gonna need 3 of those, one for here, and I think the other one goes there. Yeah, I forgot to order those when I was ordering everything else. I was quite fortunate actually, because when I was removing all the loose bolts and stuff on the engine, I must have had the bolts for the AC pump, because I found ones that fit perfectly, and I've just done those up with a 14mm socket. I'll mount the alternator now. Right, so I kind of got it in place. I had to use a screwdriver to simulate a long bolt that I don't have. I'm going to have to go back to Subaru parts guy and ask him for a little bit of help on that. There is supposed to be a bracket here, which is part of the power steering pump, which naturally we're not going to have. Sorry, very noisy down my road today. So I'm going to have have a look at parts diagrams and see if I can use the adjuster for the tension on this without the actual pump in place. So just for the moment, got the screwdriver holding it in. Now, here is the cable on the 86, which has the alternator connector and the big power connector, or is that earth connector? I can never remember on these. Now, that does fit on that, but the angle that this is coming in, this little recess is on the wrong side, so I'm going to cut away at the plastic because I can't rotate that, unfortunately, and hopefully that will then fit. Okay, it's on. It's not pretty, but this is the only way that I can get it to run where it wasn't pushing dangerously against this, popping off the vacuum hose there, or stretching this, because this is a lot longer. So I've just bent this at a 90-degree angle, bolted it in like that, and then that's still got a bit of play. That's not being interfered with. A little concerned about this resting on the side of the engine there, but I think it's going to be okay. I might just put a little bit of like heat wrap around that. But yeah, that is pretty much as far as I can take the alternator until I've got all the proper brackets and bolts and stuff. What I can do though, try to fit the AC pipes. Okay, let's start with the first one at the front that comes from the little radiator, from the condenser radiator. I'm not really that hot on AC. That just needs to go like that. So that is easy. Let's do that one now. Little plastic cap in there I need to remove. Okay, cap is out, and I gave both ends a bit of a clean. So that should just go on there. And I can get the bolt. And of course this bolt and union came off of the 86. So looks like that's universal, that's compatible. Now the other one is a bit more tricky. Yes, I can get it to fit. That's not the problem. It's the angle of this pipe. Because of how it comes pretty much straight out from the bulkhead, it's touching the back of the engine. So I'm going to have to do something about that. I don't know if I can bend the pipe slightly. What I think I'll do is I'll just undo it from there, get it in a vise, and very gently try to bend it up a little bit. Well, it came off. That's a start. So I cannot modify this, no way. The aluminium, I think it's aluminium pipe, is just too brittle, and I just know that if I try to force this in a vise, it's going to snap or it's going to crimp in on itself and it'll be totally useless. Unfortunately, that does mean that that's as far as I'm taking the AC today, until we get that pipe done and until we get all of the correct brackets and bolts and everything for this. But one of the things that I've been meaning to do, which I've finally done, is the big cable that comes from the starter motor. Now you'll probably say, well, why is that a thinker? Because this is a GT86 part in a GT86, it should just fit right. Wrong, because this actually from the factory runs across the top of the intake manifold. Of course, I don't have an FA20 in here anymore, so there's nowhere to attach it to. So what I did is I actually clipped off all the little plastic clips that were on the wiring harness, and I routed it up from the back of the gearbox here, where it actually mounts above the starter motor, underneath the clutch slave next to the brake master, and then I've routed it across the slam panel. There are like 3 little plastic clips I just broke out and then I've just popped some long cable ties in there. Some Mighty Car Mods cable ties actually, and then I've just kind of left the cables dangling here. I know that one of them is going to be a positive, one's a negative, and then I'm not sure what the third one's for. I'll have to look at the wiring diagram, but I've just crimped them together for the moment just to tuck them out the way so that they don't accidentally move in the night and short out on the battery. Of course, we've got lots of vacuum hoses, fuel hoses and everything to connect up so that the car's got some vacuum and also has got some fuel, always handy. But yeah, for the moment, I think that's probably as much as I'm going to do today on the top of the engine. Let's move to the bottom of the engine. Oh, that's not supposed to be hanging down. Okay, so what I'm thinking I'm going to try to do now for the rest of this video, for the rest of today, ignore the red paint. There were just some bits where I'd scraped the pipe and I didn't have any black paint to hand, so I've just put red paint on there. I think I'm going to take one of these exhaust manifolds, or both, and I'm going to try to attach them and see how we finally get on with clearance. What I am going to have to do though, as you can see up here, I've got a stud there, but studs are missing in all the other holes. Luckily, I have some brand new, genuine Subaru studs, so I guess we'll start by putting those in. So here is the kit of all brand new studs and nuts. Of course, that's the part number for the nuts. There doesn't seem to be a part number for the studs. I'll try to find that and stick it in the description. But yes, so these need to be worked into the bottom of the engine. Doesn't matter if they're not 100% torqued up, because as you're actually torquing up the headers, these are going to get torqued up as well. Try one. Let's see how we get on. Okay, cool. I'll just do the whole set. So with the studs all done, let's take a look at these manifolds. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So the pattern is different left to right. So as you can see, I've got the gasket on there the correct way around for these manifolds going forward, but let's flip it over. Right, so popped a couple of bolts in either end because those already line up with the ports, and I've just pencil marked these two holes. So if I remove that now, I have the two places I need to drill out. So let's get drilling. So I did it. One exhaust manifold is on. I had to cut it at the collectors. I'll show you what I mean. So that is what I've lopped off of the end of it. And this is the header fitted. So if I bring the camera around, as you can see, I re-drilled those two bolts on the inner side of the flange, and I've put just one bolt to hold it in place at the moment, but everything does line up. I've cut the collector there, and as you can see, couldn't have gone much further forward than that, otherwise we're going to start having interference issues with this front cross member. I really don't want to start modifying like the actual chassis of the car if I can help it. But if I bring you around the front, you can see it does hang ever so slightly lower than the sump plug, which is over there. So I do want to make this go up a little bit. So, but that's not a problem. That's nice and easy. I mean, for example, here I could cut the pipe here, and I could take out a section, and then I can weld it back on. That's not a problem. The same goes for the other two pipes, but essentially I'm happy that it's going in the direction I kind of hoped it would. So all I really need to do is modify these three pipes so they sit a little bit higher, a little bit more tucked up in the engine bay, and then I need to weld on some kind of collector. If I put the collector on this way and I put like a 180-degree bend in there, it can then go straight down there and it can go through the gap where the factory exhaust goes underneath the engine. So I'm going to perfect one side, and once I'm happy with what I've done, I'll then just replicate it for the other side. This is the more difficult side because the oil filter's in the way. So I need to make sure that I don't go too high, otherwise I'm going to start having interference issues with that. But it's not too bad. I mean, it's not touching. It's not actually touching, so that's fun. I might even put a sandwich plate on there, like I said in the previous video, so I can relocate the filter up higher into the engine bay, give myself a little bit more space. But yeah, I think this is going to work. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to fit the catalytic converter. I think it might just fit up in this space here, just in front of the subframe. Actually, let me get a catalytic converter and we'll just see whether it fits. So here I've got one of these eBay cats. Take it out of all its protective wrapping, and you see got a lambda probe there, Can't remember if it's like 200 cell, 300 cell, but 2-inch pipe either side should be more than enough. When you think it's 2 banks, so that's 2-inch each side, 4-inch in total, something like that. I know it's not exact science. Well, how about that? Problem solved. So the cat does physically fit in there, but you see what I mean. I'm going to have to bring these 3 pipes round into a new collector at 90 degrees and then 90 degrees again to make it meet up with the cat there. But then the back of the cat can be poking out straight through the subframe there. So this should work. If I basically do the same on both sides, that will probably do the job nicely. Well, that's me done for the day. I've had enough. Literally getting that one manifold drilled up and lopped off so it will fit has taken all the energy out of me. But the good thing is, next one I know exactly what I do, same as before. So I say goodbye to both 86s and we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.